business tips to successfully start and run your business so your business doesn't run you. And more importantly, we provide personal development tools to create a better version of yourself to provide the solid foundation for your life and business to stand upon. This is the Biz Reveal, and I'm your host, Craig Sawyer. This week's episode is sponsored by Sawyer Health Solutions. Protecting what's important to you is what's important to us. Get your free health insurance quote at SawyerHealthSolutions.com. More than just a business coach, Ann Watson identifies your potential and encourages you to achieve it through mindset, coaching, key business principles, and creating strategies that work. Ann reveals her passion for helping people with a dream get clear on their ideas and the audiences they serve, and explains how to communicate it effectively. After the show, learn more at www.annwatson.com. This is the Biz Reveal podcast with this week's guest, Ann Watson.
Well, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me and having me on your show. And I'm looking forward to speaking with you and your audience. My name is Ann Watson. I'm from the Dallas, Texas area, and I am a business strategy and communication coach. I work mostly with online entrepreneurs and small business owners. And my whole focus is really helping people figure out what is their signature message and then developing their signature offer. And so I love to work with multi-passionate entrepreneurs that have all of the ideas, and I help them siphon through those ideas, figure out their lane, that one big thing they want to do. And then we develop a program around it that can become a sustainable, effective, monetized business model. And that sounds like a whole lot of just businessy and tech words. But I love to just inject fun into this. And I love to encourage people, and I love them to help them get unstuck and out of their own way. And we have a lot of times doing it, even if I occasionally have to break out a little bit of Broadway Hamilton rap just to, tell them not to throw away their shot, whatever we got to do to get them there. I just have the most fun of my life doing it. And so I'm excited to talk with you about that today. And hopefully your listeners can learn something from it.
I think that they will, because I certainly am going to, because what the listeners don't know is you and I have been talking for the last 15 minutes. And I maybe should have been, I probably will include that into the actual episode. So
maybe.
So there's actually a couple of different things that I wanted to talk with you about today. I mean, one, you are an expert, or at least, somebody who knows a lot, and you tell me if it's an expert or not, on imposter syndrome, which we've discussed on the podcast multiple times. And it's always good to get different points of view on it, different tips, because I think it is a big issue. It is with me for sure. And I think it's a big issue. And I think it needs to be a bigger conversation with a lot of people, because it has to do with self-confidence and things like that, which 100%. We could all use a lot more of. So I definitely want to go into that subject, but I also want to go into what you just said, that, you work with companies to help them deliver their signature message, their signature offer. And that's something I think could help a lot of the listeners, me included. So I think we might be talking about a couple of different things today, which would be pretty fun. So
yeah, it will be.
Let's start off with the, because I have some questions prepared, and because it is one of the most important things to me is talking about the imposter syndrome. If you wouldn't mind, just talk to people, just tell them about what imposter syndrome actually is, and why it is so important to talk about.
Sure. And it's absolutely something that everybody deals with. So the first thing that I want to say about it is we have to stop acting like it's not normal, like there might be something wrong with us if we're feeling this imposter syndrome. I think, first of all, imposter syndrome is just this belief that you are somewhere where you don't belong, right? And this happens whenever you take on a new adventure, or when you are in the middle of an adventure and you look sideways to see what somebody else is doing, and you perceive that they're doing something better, or they're doing something more effectively than you are. And you sit and you ask yourself, why am I even here? Why am I even doing this? It does tend to come, like you said, from this idea of whether or not we feel like we're an expert in our field. And there are very, very few people in the world that can say they are truly an expert in their field. And so I want to take being an expert in the field off of the table, because what it's important to remember is that You are an expert. You are an expert in your story. You are an expert in your experience, and you are an expert in your why. The reason that you're doing what you're doing, the reason that you started a podcast, the reason that somebody else started a business or started a ministry or a mission, or somebody else is pursuing a public speaking career or starting a podcast, whatever that is, there is a reason that you did that. And it's because you felt like you had something to share. You had something to offer. You are an expert in your why. And the reason that you are unique and what makes you so important at what you're doing is because your story, your point of view, your values, your belief, all of those things are completely unique to you. Nobody else has that exact same set of values. It's like the Strength Finders books, right? If you've ever taken any of those Gallup polls and determined what your top 5 strengths are, there are up to 36 different strengths that you can have. And your chances of having the top 5 strengths of somebody is something like 1 in 300,000. Your chances of having the top 5 strengths in the same order as someone is like 1 in 4 or 5 million. So you are truly unique. And that statistic keeps on going. I heard somebody talk about it once and it kind of blew my mind, but it always reminds me that I have a unique point of view. I may not be a complete expert in what I am doing. I may not be the most learned person or have a doctorate in this thing, but I have experience and I have hard-won wisdom that's valuable to somebody.
And I agree with that because I struggle with this with, my God, probably just about everything that I do in my life. And I'm very goal driven. I have a lot of ambition. There's so many different things that I want to achieve before that last day comes for me. Right.
Absolutely.
I just feel like I got so much to do. And I actually had the question asked of me. And this is, I think, what we started to talk about before we actually started recording the show today. And I wanted to bring this up. When I decided last year that I wanted to start the podcast and talk to a bunch of different people like you, I love talking to new people. As you said, everybody has a story and everybody's story is different. Everybody has a different opinion and a different experience. And I want to talk to a bunch of different people and learn what their experiences are and learn from them. And hopefully by having the podcast, get out there so other people can learn from them as well. Yeah. And I had somebody that I work with ask me, what makes you the pro in business to have a business and entrepreneurship podcast? And I'm like, not a damn thing. That's what I bring guests on the show for, right? I'm just the host. They get to be the pros and all those different things. And I get to learn just, right alongside of my listeners. And I just basically just kind of guide the conversation, and let you do your thing, ask a couple questions and, ask the questions that I would have as a normal person. So right now, and I mentioned to you prior to starting the show, that I'm going to started writing a book, right? I'm going to write a book this summer. That's my big goal. That's my goal for 2021. I think a lot of people are doing the podcast thing and writing books since COVID started, right? Because we're all at home and we got the spare time. But again, that's where the imposter syndrome kicks in because I'm like, who am I? What makes me think I'm so special that I can write a book and be the expert in what it is that I'm going to be talking about?
Sure. Well, okay. So I'm going to just ask you a question back. Who are you not to write it? Right? If you have something to say and you have a point of view, then there is and you want to write this book and you're compelled to write this book, there are people out there that will learn from you. And this is one of the things that I like to teach my clients. How many times have you heard a concept, right? Somebody's taught something over a podcast or a book or a YouTube video, whatever it is. And then one time, you've heard it 30 times, right? One time somebody says it just different enough that you go, oh my gosh, that's what that whole thing meant. Oh, I totally get it now. And just the neurons start firing and the light bulbs start coming on and you're like, oh my gosh, I get it. I totally thought it was this thing or that thing. But but now I see it's this.
It's just a different point of view that might just really kickstart somebody's thought process and be relatable.
Exactly. Yeah. And what if your book is that catalyst for people out there who will have the opportunity to read it? What if it's in the reading of your book that people's light bulbs go on and they're like, oh my gosh, because of the way he said this in the context of his own story or his experience, I finally understand this concept. I've heard this thing a million times, but never understood why it was important or why I needed to do it or how it fit into my business. But now I've just read this and I'm like, oh my gosh, not only do I understand what it is, I'm inspired to go get working on this because it finally clicked. And if you are the person that can be the catalyst in that way for someone else and you don't write that book, I hate to tell you this, but you are actually stealing from them.
It's a missed opportunity.
You are robbing them of the opportunity to advance their own business or their own life or their own inspiration if you hold back from sharing that thing that you have in your heart to share. So I think you need to write the book. Like it's a moral imperative at this point.
I just got to get the words out there. It was just another good thing because sometimes it's just a matter of, and depending about what you're writing about, right? But
sure.
My wife wrote a book and it was about a tremendously devastating experience that happened to her in her marriage. And more than anything, it got it out of her, taking it out of you and putting it on paper. That's the most important part. But then if one person can relate to that and it helps them through the same type of situation, I mean, how good is that? It took it out of you and it also took it out of somebody else as well. And I think, and to back up your point of view there on that, or your, where you're coming from there, the people who I've related to the most whenever, like I've read a book or I've seen a speech, a talk, are the people who have the most common backgrounds, like, just normal, everyday blue collar backgrounds, not the
100%,
not the PhD. I can't relate to them.
Right.
And maybe if I was somebody, I am so sorry. My throat is bothering me today.
It happens, man.
If I was somebody who had a PhD or something like that, maybe I could relate, as it makes sense because, we like to be around like-minded people. But if I can be around somebody who just grew up in a normal household, maybe not low income, but, just like a middle-class income family, close family, just somebody that I can relate to, and then they've achieved a lot. I want to know what they did because they came from the same thing that I came from. And then look what they've done. I want to know how they did it because that's the same path that I want to be able to take. And it just seems more relatable.
Oh, 100%. I mean, this is what we talk about in marketing, right? Is that when you're putting yourself out there and marketing and trying to build awareness, what you want to do is create the know, like, and trust factor. You want people to know who you are and what you're about. You want them to like you, which comes from that relatability and that authenticity. And you want them to trust you. So the more that they get to know you and see that you're doing what you say you're doing and you're, following through with the promises that you're making, they begin to trust you. They turn into clients and then they turn into a loyal following. But know, like, and trust doesn't necessarily come from the guy with the PhD, right? The guy who's standing up there on the platform above you, trying to tell you how it is. It comes from the person that understands that standing on that platform is about being able to reach the people in the back of the room so that they can hear you. You're not on that platform because you're the expert or the star. You're on that platform so that the people in the back have an opportunity to hear it too. And so just understanding that your ability to help somebody comes from your relatability and your authenticity is huge because, man, I don't want to hire somebody stuffy and boring and full of knowledge. It's going to make me feel stupid all the time.
Right.
I want to learn what's that magic sauce for people who've gone before me. And you only need to be 10% ahead of somebody in order to teach the person behind you how to do something. And that speaks back to that imposter syndrome, right? That people are so worried about being an expert and they're feeling like they need to be 100% in front of somebody in order to teach. That's not true. Think about if you're hiking a trail, right? And you trip over a rock. You turn over and you say to somebody, hey guys, there's a rock right there. Don't step on that. You've just helped somebody.
That's true.
And that is enough to give you a valid business and career.
How do I organize my thoughts? And I'm not sure if this is something we can go into or not, but
sure.
One of the issues that I have when I'm, again, the example of writing the book, and my wife has been through this, so I guess I could ask her, but it was kind of a test thing for her as well.
Yeah.
But sometimes I feel like, as I mentioned, I have so many things I want to do that it's really, really hard for me to to sit down and organize those thoughts or organize those goals and sort them out enough to get a clear path. Do you have any methods that are effective in doing that? Like to just trying to strip things down and build upon to be able to get there?
Sure. Okay. So this is probably the number one thing that I work on with multi-passionate people. And it sounds like you are multi-passionate. You have a lot of things you want to do, a lot of things you're working on.
Right.
So the first thing that I would say is that you should look at all of these different things that you're passionate about and find that commonality. What is the through line in all of those things? Like, for instance, you really enjoy talking to people and you enjoy starting conversations with people. And so one of the things that you may be really passionate about is just creating connections and communities where people can share ideas. And so if that is the thing that you are passionate about doing, then you have to figure out, well, what is it that I want to build that creates connection and community for people? Like for you, the podcast is a great starting point, right? Because that's a place that people can come and grow and learn. But once they've listened to the podcast and they've heard somebody that's really fantastic, or they want to know more about you, then where do they go? So think about the customer journey and align that with your goals, right? So if you want to build, say, a multi-million-dollar business, we're starting with this idea of what is that through line with all of your multi-passions. And I'm just going to go with connection and community right now. So you want to build this, $1 million business about connection and community. And what's it going to take for you to get there? You're already doing the podcast. So you are creating an awareness around the conversations that you want people to have. Then the next thing you need to do is, how do you help them connect to each other and foster that community where they're sharing ideas? So it's looking at this overarching thing that you want to do and then sort of reverse engineering or backing up into, how do you create that for the people that you want to serve? And I'll tell you that one of the biggest tripping points that I see with my clients is they want $1 million business today.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And it takes time to build.
Right now.
Impatience is such a thing.
Yeah.
And it's made worse by comparison, which we touched on earlier, which is just this idea of looking sideways and seeing somebody else doing it. And it seems like they might be doing it better. And you're judging yourself or measuring yourself against them. And you feel like you're coming up short, but you don't know their backstory. And they may have 1 million followers, but we don't know if they bought those followers or not. They may have hundreds of thousands of clients, but we don't know how many of them actually were helped. So when you're comparing yourself to somebody, you're not getting that whole picture, right? So you have this philosophy of you compare yourself to yourself, which I think is definitely a better way to go. But what trips people up is they're feeling like they want this $1 million business like today, or at least tomorrow, right? I can wait till tomorrow. But here's the question that I always like to ask my people, right? If you are standing in a room of 100 people and you are sharing your heart, your why, your mission, your vision, the thing that you're building and the reason behind it, and there is one person out of 100 that is just like in tears because they're so moved and they feel seen and known and heard, is it worth it for you?
I like that picture, because that is exactly what I'm hoping for. Is that still frame picture right there. It's just being able to connect is so important for a lot of us. Everybody wants to connect, and we feel so disconnected right now because of COVID. And, it's so unnatural for people to not be around people. It's not a natural thing. Humans are built to be around each other and to communicate. So to connect with somebody on that level, especially on the level that you provided, my background, I don't think is anything special. And that's where the imposter syndrome really kicks in. It's because I don't think I'm really all that special. But when I told my story, a lot of people were like, my God, you've done so much. Really, I just lead a normal life, but that was a normal life for me, not a normal life for them.
Right.
So because of the different experiences that I've had, they are able to experience something new in their own lives, which is really, really cool.
What comes easy to you is pure genius to someone else.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's, I think, why we tend to discount it, right? Because we're like, oh, it wasn't that hard. Or really, I've done a lot, but it doesn't seem like it's special. It may not seem special to you, but it's going to rock somebody else's world if you can put it out there in a way that speaks to your ideal client.
And the perfect lead in. How do I articulate that? You know, when you have that message, you know, I speak, right? We're on a podcast, but even on the podcast, I still struggle sometimes trying to find the right words to express how I feel about something or to ask the question in the way that I want to. Vocabulary is part of it, right? I think if I built my vocabulary, just started studying dictionaries, I'd probably be much better off. But what are some of the best ways to be able to articulate those dreams that you have or articulate the message that you want to put out there?
Sure. Well, so the first one, and frankly, it's a little bit boring, but it's one of the most effective tools in your toolbox, is just coming up with a mission statement.
Okay.
You help which people overcome, solve, figure out which problem by giving them this solution so that they can do what? So it's identifying who you're helping, the problem that you're solving, and the relief that will bring, right? That's the most important thing. I talk to people about features versus benefits, because people are like, well, this is everything you get in my program. And I'm like, that's great. Why do I care? What is the benefit of doing those things? Right. And it's not just, I'm going to suddenly learn how to be on Instagram correctly. It's, I'm going to feel confident doing that. And I'm going to feel like I can master that piece, which will help me free up some brain space so that I can actually focus on my clients, which is where I want that to be. Okay. Now we're talking about a benefit. So creating a really strong mission statement for yourself, I think, is one of the ways that you can figure out how to articulate that the best. And coming up with that mission statement is one thing, but you're going to say that mission statement 14, 15 different ways every time you talk about it. And when you're doing that, that's casting vision. That's casting vision about what you're about. And people will begin to understand what you're about. What you want is for two people who are talking and you're not around. And one of them says, hey, have you listened to the Craig Sawyer podcast? This is what it's all about. And then they can repeat that thing that you do. But here's what I'm going to give you, which is like a hot little tip. Okay. When you have begun your thing and you've started talking to people that need the solution that you have, getting information from them about what made them want that, what made them tune in, what is the problem that they're struggling with, asking them those questions, right? So say you're talking to somebody or they leave a review on your podcast and they say, I just felt all over the place until I listened to Craig's podcast. Well, the next thing that you do is you put out a piece of marketing that says, do you feel all over the place? I can help. Tune in to the next episode. So what you're doing is you're taking the words that your audience or your clients are giving you and putting them back into your marketing. Because what that does is it makes people read the thing and go, oh my gosh, it's like he's in my head.
Yeah, that's me.
It's like he's reading my mail. And they're like, yeah, that's me. And then they're going to tune in. So this develops the more that you grow your business. So if you're just starting out, start by surveying people, survey friends and family. This is what I want to do. What do you think of this? Give me some feedback on the idea. And are you struggling with this at all? And what does that feel like for you? And just to begin gathering, what are the phrases and the words that the people you want to serve are using when they're talking about the problem that they have that you're hoping to help them solve?
No,
Does that make sense?
That. Yeah, it makes perfect sense because, nothing better than finding, learning straight from the source, right? The people that you're trying to help, learning straight from them. The issue that I've come up with, because I've heard that before and I've tried to dig into that. And let's talk about my main business is in health insurance. So I'll get on Facebook or something like that. And I'll put that little post out there. If you can change one thing about your health insurance, what would it be? That way I can find out how to help. But it comes across as being very salesy. People are afraid to answer that because oh yeah, it's a sales guy. He's just trying to find out how he can talk to me kind of thing, So sometimes it could come across in the opposite way that you want it to, depending on the subject, not too many people want to talk about health insurance, But, if you're talking about coffee, right? Do you
Right.
prefer your coffee black or with cream? Creamer or sugar, things like that. And you can kind of get those types of things. And, depending on what your industry is or what your business is. But
Right.
I like that, getting the information straight from them and then turning it around and creating the information that you're providing and catering it specifically to the people that you want to cater it to.
Absolutely. So in the case of your insurance, right? And you're asking, what is the number one thing that you hate about insurance? And you may be getting crickets, right?
Right.
Is that the way that you would ask that question, say at a cocktail party? Probably not. What you might say at a cocktail party is something more along the lines of, all day long, I hear people tell me how they hate insurance. What is the biggest thing that bugs you about the insurance industry today?
Gotcha. So try not to make it sound so darn formal. So
right.
Worded so perfectly, but worded the way that people actually speak.
Well, not to mention the fact that if you word it that way, people are going to be compelled to answer. Oh, I'll tell you. Right.
Let me tell you something. How much time you
right. Exactly. Or if you're saying, how do you prefer your coffee, black or with creamer? Instead, I might get on there and say, okay, I am a diehard coffee with cream girl, but I know not everybody believes this way. So here is your chance to prove me wrong. Why should I get rid of my creamer? Go. Let people argue with you.
I like that.
So think about phrasing your questions almost as if you're at a cocktail party and it's a more casual environment and you just want to have a good time, right?
Why pay for car insurance every month if you're a safe driver and have never been in a car accident? Because insurance is not for when things are going good. Insurance is for when things go wrong. And you need to have it there at all times so that when that time comes, you have the coverage you need. Health insurance is no different. When you are healthy, it may seem unnecessary to pay for health insurance, but everybody is healthy until they're not. What happens when something goes wrong? An accident around the house, a necessary surgery, or perhaps a virus that has taken the planet by storm. What then? You need to make sure you have a plan in place to protect yourself, your family, and your financial security. Health insurance is there to make sure all the pieces are put back together again. But you can also be rewarded for your good health history and pay much less for better benefits, and we can show you how. Sawyer Health Solutions. Great health coverage when you need it most, but more affordable for when you don't.
But then think about potentially asking that too in a way that's going to stir somebody up, right? If I'm like, I believe that black coffee is the devil and anybody who drinks black coffee has something seriously wrong with them. Prove me wrong, go. You're going to get some responses.
Because getting emotion, bringing emotion does spark conversation.
Right.
I mean, not necessarily controversy, but emotion. If you can make somebody excited, make somebody, argumentative, make somebody happy, if you can change that emotion, that gets people animated enough to actually respond.
Exactly.
So when we're talking about this, I think this is a good segue into talking about like the signature message of a business. And you mentioned in your intro that that's one of the things that you help businesses do is get their signature message and their signature offer and then get it out there to the masses. Right. So if I am Joe Schmo business, right?
Okay.
We're not going to do a specific industry here just because,
sure.
I don't want to talk about myself, but if you want to, feel free to just to give an example. But one, how do I narrow down what my message actually is? Because it's kind of hard to get it out there if you don't know. And I think if you don't have a message that you know what it is, maybe that's the biggest problem that you've got as a company is you don't know what your message is that you're putting out there. So what's a way that you can really narrow that down, find out what your message is, and then get it out there to the masses?
Okay. So first of all, a quick disclaimer, because I work mostly with entrepreneurs and small businesses. So not typically with really big companies. It may be a little bit different. My answer might be different for big company.
Okay.
But if you're a small business entrepreneur or you have a small team, then the first thing I'm going to say about figuring out your signature message is taking the things that you are naturally good at, that you just enjoy doing, and then figuring out what you're really passionate about. Now, disclaimer within a disclaimer. If I'm saying the things that you're naturally good at, I want to make sure that people understand that when I say you are naturally talented at, that means that you will have the ability to be great. It doesn't necessarily mean it's always going to come easy or that it's not going to be hard work, right? But what are those things that you love doing? And then what are the things that you're kind of passionate about? So for example, I have a client who is extremely passionate about helping women who are leading. She feels like if they're, running a Red Cross organization, or they're running a big ministry, or they're running a big business, or whatever that is, that there's very few people that are like giving back to the leader. So she's created a business around equipping and collaborating and connecting women in really high capacity leadership roles so that they have an opportunity to collaborate and share ideas and all these kinds of things. So she is good at connecting people, and her passion is helping women who are in leadership roles get connected to each other so that they can collaborate and grow and feel refreshed and all the things, right? So that's one piece where what you're good at and your passion kind of meet. But here's another thing that I'll throw in there for anybody who's still feeling a little bit stuck. What makes you angry in this world? What just makes you want to grab somebody by the shoulders and shake them and be like, if you only knew this, it might be different. And that's going to be a big clue for you about where your passion actually lies, but more so, what the world needs. So your purpose in life is actually at the intersection of your passion and what the world needs. So when you can kind of figure out what you're good at and what you're passionate about, and then figure out what just makes you crazy that you just want to help somebody figure out, then you've discovered what the world needs that you may have to offer.
There's a lot of soul searching involved there. I mean, because you
There
have to really
is.
dig sometimes to find out I know what I really care about. And and I'm one of the people who I know what I'm really passionate about as well.
Sure.
But not everybody knows that. I mean, if I ask my wife right now, my wife is, I'm madly in love with my wife, and she's just, I've learned so much from her. But if I asked her right now what she's tremendously passionate about, I'm not sure she would have an answer for me, because not all people think about that because they just don't feel like they need to. And with me, with my goals that I have and all the ambition I've got, I do try to sit and think about what just makes me tick? What makes me move? So I know, but not everybody knows that. So sometimes you do have to sit down there and just really dig and soul search. And that's the hard part. And that's kind of like where I was asking you about, how do I articulate what I'm trying to do or what I'm trying to achieve? Because articulating it is difficult, but knowing what you're trying to articulate is the hardest part. I don't know where I'm going sometimes. I just have this feeling, this emotion that I want to do something. And I kind of, I want to speak to people. I want to talk to large groups of people. I'd like to do public speaking. I'd like to have engagements like that. But what the hell am I going to talk about? I want to motivate people, but I don't know how I want to motivate them,
Okay, so this is where I'm going to kick you back to this mission statement idea, right? Where you're figuring out when I say I help people, which people, right? And this is the thing where you're going to kind of look at, well, what problem do you see in the world that you potentially have a solution for? Who are the people groups that are suffering with this? Like, for instance, you mentioned that your wife wrote a book about a divorce or her previous marriage, right? She may be very passionate about helping couples or women who are in divorce recovery. So she knows, okay, this is the group of people that I want to help. Then you talk about the problem and the solution that you have. This is by far the hardest thing for multi-passionate entrepreneurs. And I know because I am one, because you have experience and you have interest in a lot of different areas. Landing on just one feels like the most painful thing you can do, because you're like, but I wouldn't mind working with these people and I would love to speak into this. So here's my suggestion. Figure out what you want to do and plant that flag for 12 to 18 months. Focus in on the one area and just put everything you've got into it. The hard thing is going to be letting the other areas go, or convincing yours, because this is what multi-passionate entrepreneurs do, right? Is they're like, okay, I want to help people learn how to communicate their message. Well, I mean, that could be teaching them about leadership, because leaders have to communicate. And well, no, we're not talking specifically about leadership. We're talking about just communicating a message. If you have a message to communicate, then let's do that.
So we need
Multi-passionate
to
entrepreneur. Yeah.
like bring that niche, narrow the
Yeah.
niche, because
Narrow the niche.
the book for me it's going to be called Bounce Back, Bounce Forward, because everybody talks about, like, when they have a failure or something like that, and then they ask you, how did you bounce back? And I don't believe in bouncing back, because to me, that sounds like you went backwards. I want to bounce forward. So that it's a motivation to get back up on your feet and continue to move. But is that too broad of a niche? Because again, motivational speaking, my God, it's a huge, huge area. So should I narrow that niche down to a specific group of people? For example, I have history in the military. I have history as a single father for 12 years. So I could be talking to single fathers who have gone through divorces and custody battles and things like that, and bouncing forward from that. So is it about narrowing the niche down to a more specific group instead of staying so broad?
Well, it depends. You could definitely narrow it down to, say, just single fathers or former military, if you want, if that's your desire. I love the idea of bounce forward. And so for me, I might suggest that you would narrow your niche down to people who have experienced an epic failure. Right?
But wouldn't that be
Everybody can identify with this.
We've all experienced some type of epic failure, but then you have to what's considered an epic failure, because I know some of my failures suck, right?
Right.
Some of them really, really bad, but to other people, those huge failures that I feel are huge to me may not be huge to them. So we've all experienced failure, and that's kind of where I was going with this. Is that's where my base is as far as writing the book. It's pretty much very generalized to everybody who's had a failure and needed to come back from that failure. That's all of us. But
absolutely,
should I keep it that way? Or, because I mean, that is a broad audience. I can speak to a lot of different people. A lot of people can relate to that, but is it too broad?
So how are you going to define epic failure?
See, that's one of the questions I had for you.
Right. So, but that's what I would say is, as you're digging into your niche, I mean, first of all, what we're talking about right here is your ideal client avatar.
Exactly.
This is the person that you want to serve the most. And I always recommend to people that you develop one person in your mind. And I call it an avatar, because it doesn't have to be someone that you know or an actual person that you've met. It could be kind of an amalgam of people. But if you do have one person in your mind that fits that bill, like if you have a really good friend who's going through something, and really that's the person that you're thinking of and you're writing that book, then use that. That's fine. But defining who that ideal client avatar is really important. And if you know somebody and you have somebody in your mind that is who you want to write this book for, then I recommend that you get a picture of that person and you put it up next to your laptop and you write that book to one person.
Okay.
If you are using an avatar, pick a picture off of Google or something, print it out and put it next to your computer. Give that person a name, Eddie, Shirley, whatever, and write that book only to that one person. What will happen is, because you know your person so well, that book is going to carve its own niche. You're going to figure out who the people are that need this book as you're writing to the one person.
I love that, because you mentioned like the cocktail party earlier, right?
Right.
And when you were saying that, it reminded me of two things, but the biggest thing it made me think of was sitting across a table. Who doesn't like having a drink or two, right? And then get into a conversation with somebody. And I've done this a million times and I love doing it. It's actually one of the things I like doing most of my life, is just sitting down and having like a genuine conversation with somebody who might, who relates to me and I relate to them, and just having that conversation about whatever subject that is with them. And by having that picture, you're kind of doing that. So now I can write the book for that person instead of for, the million people that I want to reach. It's not about the million people. It's about the one person which might be multiplied a million times over, but it's really about that one person. The other thing that made me think about, and this is so silly, completely off topic, but that's how I think, is when I was doing voiceover stuff and I was kind of trying to create like cartoon characters, I would just draw a cartoon character, stick it in front of me and just like, okay, how do I think that cartoon character would sound? Anyway, completely off topic,
that's
but you see why it's hard for me to organize my thoughts.
No. But but it's not hard for you to organize your thoughts. It's hard for you to understand how all of your thoughts are organized.
Okay.
Right. Because you do have a through line there. First of all, the cartoon character is you created an ideal client avatar with the cartoon character and you asked, how does this person think or feel? That's what you need to do with your clients, with your podcast listeners, with your business, whatever that is that you're building. But then you also just said one of the things that you can do all day is just have conversations with people. So immediately in my mind, I'm thinking about this book, Bouncing Forward or Bounce Forward. And then the subtitle to me is Conversations with People Coming Back from Epic Failure.
You're right.
And you maybe
me. I love
create the book as a series of conversations that you have with people who have bounced forward in their lives.
I like that. And because that can relate, again, it's not just about me and my stories.
Right.
It's about how my stories might be similar to everybody else's stories, because we all do have a common thread. We've all been through something. We all have a story, but our stories are different. And that's what makes reality TV is the perfect example of this. It's a perfect example. We are all interested in other people's lives. And why is that? Because it makes us feel more normal, right?
Right.
Because somebody else has always got a crazier life than you do. But when you're watching, you're like, okay, my life's not so bad. Or, okay, so it's not just me, other people are like this too. Other people have those same conversations with their spouse, or, other people have the same problems with their kids, or other people deal with these work issues the same way. And it just makes you feel like you belong. And everybody wants to feel like they belong, but we're all interested
100%.
in other people's lives. We always want to get that fly on the wall feeling of being in somebody else's house with them, not knowing, and listening to their conversations.
Well, and part of the reason that we do that, and it's a twofold thing, but part of it is because we want to feel normal. But then sometimes doing that actually makes us feel not normal, right? Like we feel like, well, why don't I have a reality show and I'm making millions of dollars from just showing up and wearing great makeup or whatever the Kardashians do? So I'm going to go back to imposter syndrome, which is where we started, right? When you are doing something for the very first time, you're going to feel uncomfortable. And I want imposter syndrome to feel like it's a normal thing for people, because I want somebody to feel like, oh, imposter syndrome. Oh, you know what? I must be trying something new. I must be stepping out of my comfort zone and doing something new. And then congratulate yourself for doing that. That takes courage. That takes bravery. That takes badassery. I hope it's okay if I say that.
Absolutely.
It's like all those things. And yeah, it's going to feel uncomfortable and weird until it doesn't. So you might have felt like you were an imposter when you first started doing the podcast, right? But now if somebody came up to you and said, hey, can you show me this setup and tell me what all these buttons do? You'd have no problem, right? Because you've done it for so long, you no longer feel like an imposter.
So how do you get through the imposter syndrome as you're experiencing it? Because for me, and this can be healthy or not healthy, I've heard different points of view on this as well. It's kind of a fake it till you make it sort of situation for me. Like,
right.
And it's actually been beneficial at times if I'm strong enough to actually do it. Because even as a salesperson, I'd still have some reservations about doing that one-on-one, like, doing door-to-door type thing. If I'm introducing myself and I'm trying to, introduce the products that I offer to somebody one-on-one, kind of like that cold call visit, it's uncomfortable for me. That rejection, that chance for rejection is still uncomfortable even after all these years. So for me, that's the imposter syndrome, right? Who am I to be knocking on this guy's door and saying that I'm the pro? Well, actually, I kind of am the pro at this. I'm really good at what I do. However, I feel like I have to put myself in that mode where I'm an actor. And so I can be anybody I want to be. They don't know me. They don't know Craig Sawyer. So who do I want Craig Sawyer to be right now? And I can create that persona who is confident, who is strong, who is taller and bolder, and, can really get out there in front of people and do it. And so I kind of put on an act to be able to push through that feeling.
Right. But then once you start the act, do you still feel like you're acting, or do you feel like you're you?
If you do it long enough, like you said, like with the podcast, if you do it long enough, you've been doing it so long, like you don't even think about it anymore. It becomes second nature. So now you've kind of faked it till you made it.
Right. So this is something that Brene Brown, I don't know if you've heard of her. She's written several books. She's a neuroscience researcher in University of Houston. And she's written a bunch of books about this. And she calls imposter syndrome comes from the FFT, the effing first time. Right.
Ain't that the truth? Yeah.
And it's just it's just a normal thing that people need to understand, that the first time or the first several times that you're doing something, you're going to feel weird. But even after that, as you do it, if you continue to feel nervous, congratulations. It means you're not a sociopath, right? It means you care about what you're doing. It means that that you have the right heart for this, that you do want to help people, that you're in the right place. Feeling nervous doesn't mean that you're not an expert or that you're not good at what you're doing. It means you care that you can serve that person well. And that's a good thing. And as far as rejection goes, I mean, listen, if you are not getting at least 100 no's for every yes that you get, you are not asking enough people. I mean, the goal when you're putting yourself out there is you want to get the right people in the fold, right? You want to attract the right clients or the right audience. In doing that, in attracting the right people, you have to repel the wrong people. So whenever somebody tells you no and feeling rejected, it's not about you feeling like an imposter or you're not good at this. It's about that person self-deselecting. And you can say, thank you so much. I don't need to waste my time trying to convince you of this thing, because you took this door and that's great. Now I can focus all of my energy and attention on the people that came into this party. So first of all, you're going to feel uncomfortable the first time that you start doing something, but that will kind of wane the longer you do it. But then even if you're feeling nervous as you continue going, it's just an indicator that you care. And then, like I said, you want to attract the right people, which means by nature, you will repel the wrong people. That is a good thing. That helps you not waste your time on the wrong people.
And I don't think there's enough emphasis on what you just said, that it's okay to get those rejections, because like you said, you're repelling those people. You don't want to attract everybody. You don't want everybody to like you or like
think
what
how
you
exhausting
have to offer.
that would be if you had to serve everyone.
Right. And so like you said, you're deselecting. So, that if you think about it as I don't know, like a survey type thing, do you like blue? Yes, I do. Do you like red? No, I don't. So I don't circle that one. Do you like pink? And you are choosing exactly who your prime customer is, who you want your person to talk to. That way you can focus all of your concentration on the right 100%. People, not just every person.
And this is the thing that's actually this is the reason why comparison can't be part of the game, right? Because your survey says, do you like blue, red, pink, yellow? But the person next to you is saying, do you like up, down, in, or out? You can't even compare these things together. And so it may seem like they're doing the same thing as you, but you have a unique point of view. You have unique experience and a unique story that's making you phrase the questions and ask the things in a specific way, leading to a specific result that Joe Schmo next to you is never going to get. Even if they're trying to do the same thing or reach the same audience, because his story is different. His motivation is different. The way that he works is different. And so comparison is just a trap. I tell people comparison has one job: to lie to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're in a sales business like I am, I mean, everything. And I do mean everything, because it's all about numbers. Right. And everybody needs to know where they stand. Is what I'm doing right? Is what I'm doing wrong? Am I in line? Because the absence of feedback, the mind goes crazy, right? If you don't have feedback, that means bad things, right? I mean, How many of us have had a job where we have a boss who doesn't really give good feedback at all? They haven't talked to you in a couple of weeks. What do you start doing? Like, oh man, Bob, I don't think Bob likes me. I wonder if they're getting ready to fire me. So the absence of feedback feels negative when they could be thinking, no, Craig's doing a good job. So I don't have any feedback to give. He's doing great. I'm just going to let him keep doing his thing. So the comparison, like when you're in sales, you're comparing to where other people, how other people perform, and it gives you an idea of where you should be, or, at least with your peer group. But in doing so, there's almost always going to be somebody or a lot of somebodies who are always doing better than you, consistently better than you. And it feels demotivating. You're like, man, I am never going to get there. Why am I even trying? I'm never going to be in the top 10. So that's why I believe it's already going to happen. They're going to compare you to other people in the company. That's just how it works in sales businesses. But if you start comparing and keeping track of your own successes and failures, because there's more to learn from the failures than there are the successes.
Sure.
But if you keep track of those, and then, week to week or month to month or year to year, where was I at for the month of March last year compared to the month of March this year? Am I up or down? Am I equal? How do I compare to my past performance? And if you're increasing and you're getting better, I think that's what the goal is, no matter where you're at in the company. But as long as you are getting better at what you do, I think that's what's the important part.
Sure, but I want you to,
go ahead.
I just want you to keep in mind real quick too, that if say there's 20 salespeople on your team and you're saying, I'm never going to be in the top 10, you are perpetually stuck at 12, right? But numbers 13 through 20 are looking at you and thinking, I'm never going to be as good as that guy.
This is true. It's all about perspective.
But what if you were the guy sitting squarely at 12 who turned back to 13 to 20 and said, hey guys, let's all get together and meet and figure out how we can get better. Let's share what we know. What have we learned? And you're not the expert in sales at your company, but you're creating conversations and a community around the idea that everybody's on the same mission. And I bet you, if you did that, you would not be stuck squarely at 12. And neither would 13 through 20. They would all grow with you. So
that's true.
It is about perspective that, maybe you're not in the top 10, but hey, those top 10 guys, their marriages are suffering. Their kids never see them. They've missed the last 10 school plays, like they had to rehome their dog because they didn't have time to feed it. That's not you.
I like that. I actually like that a lot because it is about, perspective, looking at it in a different way. I may not be as good as these people in this way, but I am better than these people. And those are the people that you want to help bring up, because I had a guest on my show a couple of weeks ago. He said, you can't push a rope. And I'd love that idea, because if you get the image in your head like I am right now, you try pushing a rope, it's just going to curl all up, right? But you pull on a rope and it straightens up and it goes along with the direction that you're pulling. So if you help the people who are not not where you're at, like you said, number 12, if they're number 15 and you're number 12, then help them get to number 13 or help them get to number 5 and pass you. That would feel even better. I love making people more successful than me, because then it also pushes me. I'm like, damn, I got them. I got them to, get motivated enough to get up there. I gotta beat them again, and it's
but you have to have the right perspective about what it means to be number 12.
Exactly. Yeah. And I like that you mentioned the family thing, because that has been one of the bigger things, is keeping that work-life balance. And I think a lot more people are figuring that out now that they've been home. To be honest, some people are like, no, get me back in the office, please.
Right. So, sure. That was bound to happen.
There's that. So with all these different tools for personal development, because that's one of the biggest things that we're talking about is improving ourselves. Because once you improve yourself, your business is also going to improve as well. It's just inevitable. Sure. With all this information, and we've only touched on a little tiny piece of it.
Right.
How do you prevent yourself from getting overload? And who do you listen to and who do you not listen to? How do you prevent that? Like, how do you know what the right path for you is for personal development?
Well, so first of all, you always have to be checking in with yourself and going back to this question of, why am I doing this?
Okay.
Right. And using that and your mission statement that you would create as filters, right? So if you are saying, I help people who are recovering from an epic failure create conversations so that they can feel normal and move forward in their lives, right? Say that's your mission statement. And somebody comes to you and says, hey, I really want you to start a podcast with me, and we're going to talk all about sales culture. And you're like, hey, I can do that, right? But my mission, the reason that I want to do this is right here. I help people who feel like they are recovering from an epic failure, create conversations that help them feel normal. The sales thing, that doesn't fit in with this.
Right.
That doesn't fit in with what I've planted my flag on, what I'm going to work on for the next 12 to 18 months. So that's going to help you say a stronger no. It's also going to help you say easier yeses, right? Because if somebody comes to you and says, hey, I want you to come on my show and I want you to talk about failures in sales, you're like, oh, yep, I got that. Easy. So that's a filtering system that you can use to make sure that you are kind of aligning the things that you're doing with the goal that you've set and the purpose that you have. Another thing that I would say is just working on one goal at a time, which for multi-passionate people is so like hard. Me saying, go have a relationship with the devil himself, because dang, right? It's like so really, really hard. So I like to invest in books, any kind of resources like Brendan Burchard's high performance habits, just kind of helping you stay focused on what the habits are that you need to build. So just pouring into yourself in that personal development way so that you're giving yourself tools. But then the last piece is, especially for multi-passionate people, our to-do lists are a mile long. And being able to focus that to-do list is so important. So it comes down to mantra, right? I don't do overwhelmed. Like if you're saying, I feel so overwhelmed. No, that is a story that you're telling yourself, and you need to tell yourself a different story. Which is I have a lot of things to do because my business is flourishing. That's great.
Again, it's perspective. But I will say a practical tip that I heard from somebody else, and I can't even remember who it was, so I wish I could give them credit, is that when you're looking at your to-do list, you really are only capable of making sure that you get 3 big goals done per day. So for entrepreneurs or small business owners or people like you and me, what is one thing that's going to generate revenue? What is one thing that's going to create content? And what is one thing that's going to just fill your soul on a personal level? So pick something from those 3 categories, make those your 3 top to-dos for the day, and just trust that if you're getting those 3 things done every day, your business will move forward. Your to-do list is going to keep growing because it's the nature of who we are. But instead of telling ourselves that we suck because we're not getting it done, let's prioritize them. What is one thing on this list that I can do today that'll create revenue? One thing that will create content for my people? And one thing that's going to make me a better human. I love that. I love that. And I think you can sum up most of our conversation with just that last sentence. Really it's what it's about, because those are the most important things.
Right.
Taking care of business, taking care of your people, and taking care of yourself.
Yes,
absolutely love that.
Exactly.
And thank you so much. That's our time for today. Man, it went fast, and I absolutely love talking to you. I could have so many more conversations with you. We're definitely going to have to do this again soon. For sure.
I'd love that.
If you wouldn't mind, tell the listeners how they can reach out to you and contact you after the show.
Sure. Well, they can always go to my website, which is Ann with an E, A-N-N-E, and then middle initial M, Watson. So AnnMWatson.com. Or you can find me on Instagram. I'm Ann Watson TX. And Instagram is my social media platform of choice, and I love answering DMs and stuff over there. So that's real easy to just start getting in contact with me and having conversations. I love to do discovery calls. So if somebody has an idea that they want to float past me to see if it's the right fit, then let's do it. Let's jump on a call and figure it out.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. What you do is very important. And I got a pretty full list of stuff that I was writing down as you were talking here. So, wow. Thank you so much. It was an awakening show for me today. So I love talking to you. We're definitely going to do this again.
Love talking to you. This was a lot of fun, and I'd be happy to come do it again. I'm looking forward to your book.
Oh, thank you. We'll
bounce
see
forward, man. I'm already in.
We'll have to see how that goes. I might have to give you credit in there for the subtitle. Thank you, Ann.
Thank you. I love it.
Thank you for joining us this week. Go to our website at thebizreveal.com to catch all of our past episodes. We're available on all podcast apps, or you can watch any of our episodes on the Biz Reveal YouTube channel. I'm Craig Sawyer, and this is the Biz Reveal. Till next time.